social play is incredibly important, and we're definitely looking into multiple game modes or changing the core game mode in a way to support social play more than we already are.
So we've come to the age-old question: to split and divide, or to rework and unite? The Bazaar will need to cater to both of its infinite lobby ladder players and its social 1v1 players. But how? And why is this potentially a problem? If you aren't caught up with the Bazaar, then you have no idea what I meant by infinite lobby ladder players, I'm sure. I'll keep the recap brief for you, but do check out our Bazaar PvE or PvP video linked below for more information, and definitely subscribe with notifications on for all Bazaar news here on the Games Play Greg channel. Shameless plug out of the way, the Bazaar recently updated to use this infinite player lobby system. Basically, throughout your run with a certain deck, you will need 10 wins or 3 losses to end the run. Each of your matches will be played against a different player, who is on the same or similar record to you. So for your first game, you'll play against someone who is also at 0 wins and 0 losses. If you win, you'll play against an entirely different person, but someone who has 1 win and 0 losses. Say you lose that game, you should play against someone with 1 win and 1 loss thereafter, and so on and so forth until you win or lose your entire run. This solved a lot of the issues for the Bazaar. Again, I urge you to go and watch the PvE or PvP video for more information. I don't really want to duplicate or replicate all of the information there. Go check it out, it's a short little recap. Or you can sit through the huge big update number 2 video from the Bazaar's official channel, links all below. Those should show you why this was introduced in the first place. But why did that cause a problem? And why am I starting a debate on whether we should split the player base or rework the game? Well, after revealing this 500 IQ matchmaking idea, the community had one particular question on their mind. How do we play against our friends? Before this change, the Bazaar had been a 1v1 game, like Magic the Gathering or Hearthstone. Those games have very easy ways to challenge your friend to a 1v1 match. That was simple to add into the base game. It made sense. However, the Bazaar has now been built and balanced around the idea of having a new opponent every round, with no waiting for an opponent to react to anything ever. So we're left with 2 options. Either we divide the player base and create multiple game modes, some against friends and some with the current core game mode, or we unite the player base under one singular game mode, the current one, with some extra rules and extrapolations should players want to challenge one another to a 1v1. No matter which option they go for, there will be challenges along the way, which they've already experienced when they tried to make the game a 1v1 by default. We forget, but it was moved away from that because it didn't really feel right. It didn't work. Turn timers of some sort will need to be reintroduced back in, so that one player isn't just waiting for hours for you to finish your exploration phase. Currently the game is built for you to play at your own pace, often putting the game down midway through a run like you would a Hearthstone arena run. But the 1v1 mode would have to put a timer on all of that. The other constraint is how long a full game of the Bazaar can be. To complete a full run, winning 10 or losing 3 can currently take about an hour. Hopefully in the 1v1 lobby there is some sort of pause functionality, but if they add the 8v8 social lobbies, you're committing to that game for the foreseeable future. That is, of course, if you don't run into one of the other huge issues they faced with the 1v1 game mode: snowballing. With large parts of the game now built to work a little like an auto-battler, Ben used a very potent example of how a 1v1 system might work in the Bazaar as it is today. So imagine an 8v8 auto-battler. Most of us have played one by now. But there are only ever 2 players. One player will pull slightly ahead, and then use that lead to snowball and crush the other player. In order to stop this from happening, the 1v1 game mode would turn into a game of counter building. He has, I don't know, Fluffernutter, so I need to build Neuter Shooter, even though it isn't part of my idea, my build, and so on. And counter building is just less fun than building your own experiment of cards. You don't want to buy that card, you need to, and that sucks. But these are all vital things to have in mind when thinking about the social game mode. How will it tackle all of these items, or should it? With that outline covered, let's dive into our options, shall we? Our first option is to split or divide the player base into multiple game modes. The general pros and cons of this are that we can make sure all of those 1v1 issues are addressed by creating an entirely new rule set, and perhaps even new balance to go along with it. But that does cost a lot of resources from Tempo. and it also means there are fewer players available to play against one another in any given game mode, as the base as a whole is split. Let's take Hearthstone as an example of this, but plenty of other card games have done it, and Artifact somehow managed to do it, and make it even worse. Paying for other game modes? Anyway, I won't get into it. In Hearthstone, for the longest time, we've had standard and arena game modes. Yes, I know there are more now, but we're just using this as an example. Let's say, because the Bazaar is now crazy popular, there are only 100 people left playing Hearthstone. Just hypothetically. 60 people are queued up in standard, with 40 people in arena. This means if you're playing standard, there are only 59 other people you could put against. They likely aren't all at the correct skill level for you, so you're likely to see the same few players over and over. Not only that, but despite being a separate game mode with dedicated support and mechanics, there are only 40 people playing arena. If that number gets much lower, they may need to have a conversation about if it's worth keeping. I've seen this happen in a game that I hold quite close to my heart. Smite, Battleground of the Gods. Twice now in this MOBA, they have removed or decided to rework a game mode because it wasn't popular enough and just continued to divide the player base further, making matchmaking for all game modes slightly worse. Now, I'm not saying this is exactly what will happen, but it is the fear in the pit of my stomach when someone says multiple game modes. But don't forget those positives. With a dedicated 1v1 and 8v8 game mode, we would see the team build up a rule set that made it as enjoyable as possible. However, with all those issues we were seeing in the 1v1 before they moved it over, I wouldn't set your heart on something as sweeping as this though, as we're approaching the window that the team would consider releasing the game, later this year, which wouldn't give them much time to develop something like this. Our other option is to keep the player base united, but offer a 1v1 or 8v8 custom lobby kind of thing. This is not only what I hope to see, but almost what I expect to see, although I am definitely prepared to be proven wrong. I would not have been able to call the infinite player lobby idea, so obviously Reynad has a couple of brain cells up on me in terms of innovation, so maybe they'll come up with something incredible again. In this scenario, we will likely see a single game mode with the option to challenge a friend if you want to, with a couple of separate rules and mechanics just to make that work. As explained before, there is no way of avoiding some sort of turn timers if we want social play, or at least waiting for your friend to finish if the timer is infinite. But hopefully with some smart rule changes, the other issues raised with 1v1s before will be a little less of a problem. They're not going to go away entirely, but you'll still be able to enjoy the game with a friend. I've really struggled to think of a competitive card game that doesn't offer any sort of additional game mode though. And that is likely because in traditional card games with a constructed deck, there are so many ways that you can play the game that no one can decide on the best one. We instead have to look to deck builders, the type of games that the Bazaar was developed to be, to find these single game modes with altered rules. Dominion is the primary one that always comes to mind for me, and while it isn't competitive like the Bazaar, there are additional rules for playing with more or fewer players than expected, a lot of them even house rules. We may end up seeing something similar to make the Bazaar palatable to larger groups of specific players. If we step outside of Dominion though, perhaps looking at the games I'm playing when I'm not playing card games, there might be a shining beacon at the end of this. In the MOBA world, you have League of Legends and Smite with their divided player bases, between ARAM and Classic 5v5 or Summoner's Rift as it's supposedly called. But we also have Dota 2, which has just one primary game mode, and a plethora of hidden gems which cost Valve virtually nothing to develop. The arcade in Dota 2 lets the community use a set of tools to create their own game modes, inviting their friends and sometimes the wider community to play them. Now this is my true hope and wish for virtually any game I fall in love with. The communities around it can develop some truly fun and engaging games which, to be perfectly honest, the developers behind these games do not have the time and resources to come up with. These games will come and go with the seasons, typically not stealing much of the player base, but rather being a fun respite for anyone wanting to mix things up. They do usually end up with a solid core of people that will just play those game modes though. And to me, that is kind of where the 1v1 and 8v8 modes should be perfected. And yes, I mean perfected, not just played. Maybe Tempo are the first ones to release this arcade 1v1 and arcade 8v8 mode, but I bet the community, if given the proper tools, can come up with some much better examples and really fun things to do with the game. It's something Reynad brought up briefly in one of his previous streams, and honestly, I really hope he digs into that. It'll take time, it's not going to be coming with a release game, at least that's where my money would be, but my god I hope we get something like this. This is an inherently social game mode, right? That's the whole point. That's why we're making this ruckus. So why not let the society build it up? What do you think is the best way forward for the Bazaar? Should they just divide the player base already and build us a dedicated 1v1 mode? Or should we accept an altered rule set and a custom friend lobby for now? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If I see anything other than angry Hearthstone bots, I'll be sure to pass your awesome idea along to the team. Don't forget to like and subscribe, it really does help the channel out, especially in this sort of period of growth as the Bazaar is growing into this wonderful flower. I've been GameSplay Greg, and I'll catch you in the next video. Ciao!